Part 1 had studied fear for 300 cycles. As a senior analyst in the consortium of fear analysts, the crystalline being had examined the terror responses of species across 47 different dimensions. Fear was universal. It was the great equalizer, the emotion that turned the brave into cowards and the strong into trembling masses. Every civilization the consortium had ever studied showed the same pattern. When fear appeared, performance declined. Always. That was why the human data made no sense. Stood in the observation chamber, its translucent form refracting the light from dozens of holographic displays. Each screen showed biological data from the species called humans, recently discovered in Dimension 7 Prime. The readings were impossible. When humans encountered danger, their fear markers spiked exactly as expected. Their hearts raced, their breathing quickened, stress hormones flooded their systems. But then something went wrong with the data. Instead of freezing or fleeing, instead of their performance dropping, humans moved faster. They thought clearer. They became more effective. "The equipment is malfunctioning," said council member, a being of pure electromagnetic fields. "No species operates better under fear. It contradicts everything we know." Had checked the equipment 17 times. "The data is accurate. I have it against multiple sources." "Then the humans are defective," another council member suggested. "Perhaps their fear response is broken. They might not actually feel fear at all." But had seen the biological markers. The humans were terrified. Their bodies showed all the signs of overwhelming terror, yet somehow they continued to function. More than function, they thrived. "I request permission to conduct field research," said. The chamber fell silent. Field research was rare. The consortium preferred to observe from a distance, gathering data through remote sensors and surveillance. Direct contact with species under study could contaminate the results. "This is highly irregular," said. "So is this data," replied. "If we publish our millennial compendium with this anomaly unresolved, our credibility will be questioned. I need to understand what is happening with these humans." The council debated for 2 full cycles before granting permission. Would go to Earth, the human, and determine why their fear response appeared to be backwards. The journey through dimensional barriers took only moments. Arrived at an orbital station above Earth, having taken on a vaguely humanoid form to avoid alarming the locals. The disguise was not perfect. The crystalline being still shimmered slightly in certain lights, and its movements were too smooth, too fluid. But humans were new to galactic society. They had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel. They would likely attribute any oddities to being an alien. The station administrator, a tired-looking woman named Director, greeted with a polite smile. "Welcome to Gateway Station. We're honored to host a representative from the consortium. Your organization's work on psychological responses across species is fascinating." "Thank you," said, still adjusting to verbal communication. The consortium typically communicated through direct thought transfer. "I am here to observe human behavior in various situations. My research focuses on fear responses." Director's smile faded slightly. "Fear responses, is there a problem?" "No problem, simply curiosity. Your species is new to our database. We wish to understand you better." The director seemed satisfied with this explanation and arranged for to have access to various human facilities and operations. Over the following days, observed humans in their daily routines. Office workers, engineers, pilots, all going about their tasks with calm efficiency. Nothing unusual appeared in the data, but was not here to study calm humans. The analyst needed to observe them under stress, under fear. The opportunity came sooner than expected. An alarm blared through the station. Sensors immediately detected a fire in one of the residential sections. The analyst rushed toward the location, eager to observe human behavior during a crisis. By the time arrived, smoke was already billowing from a corridor. Humans were evacuating, moving quickly but not panicking. Then saw her. A woman in a fire-resistant suit was running toward the flames, not away from them. Quickly scanned her biological signs. Her name was Sarah Martinez, a firefighter stationed on the orbital facility, and she was absolutely terrified. Her heart rate was dangerously elevated. Adrenaline flooded her bloodstream. Her breathing was rapid and shallow. Every biological marker screamed that she was experiencing intense fear. Yet her movements were precise and controlled. She checked her equipment with practiced efficiency, spoke calmly into her communicator, and then disappeared into the smoke. Followed, protected by its crystalline form's natural resistance to heat. Inside the burning section, the analyst found Sarah moving through the chaos with purpose. She kicked open a door, revealing a family trapped inside. Two children, crying and coughing, their parents trying to shield them from the smoke. Sarah's fear markers spiked even higher, but her hands did not shake as she guided the family toward the exit. She hoisted one child onto her back, grabbed the other by the hand, and led them all through the smoke-filled corridors. When a section of ceiling collapsed, blocking their path, Sarah immediately found an alternative route. Her mind was working faster, not slower. Within minutes, everyone was safe. The fire was contained by other crew members. Sarah removed her helmet, revealing a face covered in soot and sweat. She was breathing hard, her hands trembling now that the danger had passed. Another firefighter approached her. "That was close, Martinez. You okay?" Sarah nodded, wiping her face. "Yeah, scared the hell out of me, though." "You looked calm as ice out there." Sarah laughed, a sound edged with relief and residual fear. "Are you kidding? I was terrified the whole time, but that's what keeps you sharp, you know. Fear reminds you that this matters, that you need to focus." Process this statement. It made no sense according to every model the consortium had ever developed. Fear was supposed to impair focus, not enhance it. The analyst approached Sarah carefully. "Excuse me, I am a researcher. I observed your actions during the emergency. May I ask you some questions?" Sarah looked at the shimmering alien with curiosity. "Sure, I guess. What do you want to know?" "You were afraid during the rescue. I detected your biological fear responses, yet you performed your duties with exceptional skill. How is this possible?" Sarah seemed confused by the question. "How is it possible? I don't understand. Being afraid doesn't mean you stop doing your job. If anything, it makes you more careful, more aware." "But fear impairs performance," said. "This is a universal constant. When beings experience fear, their cognitive and physical abilities decline." "Maybe for other species," Sarah said, shrugging. "But for humans, fear is just part of the job. You learn to work with it, not against it. My instructor used to say that courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being afraid and doing what needs to be done anyway." Stood motionless, processing this information. It was not a malfunction. It was not a defect. This was intentional. Humans had somehow learned to function alongside their fear, to use it rather than be controlled by it. "Thank you for your time," said quietly. Over the next several days, the analyst observed more humans in stressful situations. A pilot who navigated through a dangerous asteroid field with steady hands despite admitting she was scared out of her mind. A doctor who performed emergency surgery while his fear markers indicated he was close to panic, yet his movements remained precise. A parent who climbed onto a precarious ledge to rescue a child, terror radiating from every cell, but determination overriding the instinct to flee. Each time the pattern repeated. Humans felt fear, real, intense, debilitating fear, and each time they moved forward anyway. Began to understand that this was not an anomaly to be corrected. This was something far more significant. The humans had somehow evolved, both biologically and culturally, to transform fear from a weakness into something else entirely. Something the consortium had never encountered before. The analysts sent a preliminary report to the council. The response was immediate and incredulous. They demanded more data. They suggested that was being deceived, that humans were somehow faking their fear responses, but knew the truth. The data did not lie. Humans were genuinely afraid, and they were genuinely unstoppable. As prepared to dig deeper into this mystery, one thought kept recurring in the analyst's crystalline consciousness. If humans could weaponize their fear like this, what else were they capable of? And what would happen when the rest of the galaxy encountered a species that treated terror as fuel rather than poison? Part 2. Investigation into human fear responses expanded beyond the orbital station. The analyst requested access to Earth itself, wanting to observe humans in their natural environment across various contexts. Director arranged transportation down to the surface, and within a day, found itself standing in a bustling city called New York. The sensory input was overwhelming at first. Millions of humans moving through crowded streets, vehicles racing past, buildings stretching toward the sky, but was not here for tourism. The analyst had a list of human activities that supposedly involved fear, compiled from Earth's information networks. The list was baffling. Humans paid money to be frightened. His first stop was something called a haunted house. The analyst stood in line with dozens of humans, all chattering excitedly about how scared they were going to be. Inside, actors dressed as monsters jumped out from dark corners. Fake blood covered the walls. Sounds of screaming and chains rattling echoed through narrow hallways, and the humans loved it. Watched a teenage girl named Emma walk through the attraction. Her fear markers were genuine. Her heart raced, her breathing quickened, she even screamed several times. But she was smiling, laughing. When she emerged from the exit, she immediately turned to her friends. "That was amazing, let's go again." The analyst approached her carefully. "Excuse me, I am conducting research. Why did you pay to experience fear?" Emma looked at the shimmering alien with surprise. "Oh, you're one of the off, right? Why? Because it's fun, I guess. It's a rush. You get scared, but you know you're safe, so it's like practice, maybe, or just proof that you can handle scary things. But fear is unpleasant. Why seek it deliberately?" Emma thought about this. "I mean, yeah, it's unpleasant in the moment, but afterwards you feel alive, like you did something, faced something. Even if it's fake, it still counts somehow." Added this to the growing file of incomprehensible human behavior. The analyst spent the next week observing humans in various fear-inducing activities. Rock climbing, where people scaled dangerous heights despite trembling with terror. Skydiving, where they jumped from aircraft while their bodies screamed danger signals. Horror films, where audiences gathered specifically to be frightened by fictional scenarios. In every case, humans felt real fear, and in every case they chose to continue. But recreational fear was one thing, needed to understand how humans handled genuine, life-threatening danger. The opportunity came when the analyst joined a deep space cargo hauler on a routine run to the outer colonies. The ship was called the Steady Hand, and its crew consisted of 5 humans who had been working together for years. The captain, a weathered woman named, welcomed aboard. "Fair warning, space travel can be boring. We're just hauling synthetic materials to Colony 7, nothing exciting." Assured her that observation was sufficient. For the first 3 days was correct. The crew went about their duties with professional efficiency. They joked with each other, played card games during downtime, and maintained their ship with care. Detected no fear responses at all. Then on the 4th day, everything went wrong. An alarm shrieked through the ship. The main reactor had suffered a catastrophic malfunction. Radiation was leaking into the engine compartment. The backup systems were failing, and they were 3 days from the nearest station. Sensors detected the crew's fear responses immediately. Every human on board experienced a massive spike in stress hormones. Their heart rates jumped. Several of them went pale. This was mortal terror, the kind that should shut down higher cognitive functions. Instead, they went to work. Barked orders, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. I need damage assessment now. Williams, shut down non-essential systems. Davis, and get me every piece of radiation shielding we have on board. Move. The crew scattered, followed the ship's engineer as she raced toward the engine compartment. The woman was crying, tears streaming down her face, but her hands were steady as she pulled up diagnostic screens. Her fear markers were so high that any other species would be catatonic. Was functional. Coolant line ruptured, she reported over the communicator. Reactor temperature critical. We have maybe 20 minutes before it melts through the containment. Can you fix it? Demanded. I don't know. I'd have to go into the compartment. Radiation levels are already dangerous. How dangerous? His voice cracked. Lethal, Captain. Even with shielding, I'd get a dose that would kill me in a few hours. Silence filled the ship. Waited for the panic, for the breakdown, for the fear to finally overwhelm these humans. Instead, spoke again. But if I don't, we're all dead in 20 minutes instead of a few hours. So I'm going in. The hell you are, Williams said, appearing beside. You've got kids back home. I don't, I'll go. You don't know the systems like I do, argued. Then walk me through it. I can follow instructions. His voice cut through the debate. Can Williams do this with your guidance? Hesitated, then nodded even though the captain could not see her. Yes, maybe. The procedure is complex, but if I talk him through each step. Then that's what we do, said. Williams, suit up, get him ready. Everyone else, prepare for emergency reactor shutdown procedures. Watched Williams put on the radiation suit. The man was terrified. His hands shook so badly that Davis had to help him with the seals. Sweat poured down his face. He was breathing in short, sharp gasps, but he walked toward the engine compartment anyway. For the next 15 minutes, observe something that every principle of fear response the consortium had ever documented. Williams worked inside the lethal environment, his body screaming at him to flee, while guided him through repairs with a voice that cracked and broke but never stopped. Coordinated the rest of the crew, her own fear visible in every tense muscle, but her commands clear and decisive. Davis and prepared emergency pods, crying openly while their hands moved with practiced precision. They were all going to die, and they knew it. The fear was existential and overwhelming, and they worked anyway. Williams replaced the ruptured coolant line, talked him through the restart sequence, brought the backup systems online, and somehow, impossibly, the reactor stabilized. Williams stumbled out of the engine compartment and collapsed. The crew surrounded him, checking his radiation exposure. The numbers were bad, not immediately lethal but close. He would need serious medical treatment when they reached the colony. Worth it, Williams gasped, attempting a smile. If we're gonna die, we're gonna die trying right. The others laughed, a sound edged with hysteria and relief. They were alive. They had been terrified every second of the crisis, and they had saved themselves through sheer determination to act despite that terror. Stood apart, processing what it had witnessed. This was not training. This was not conditioning. This was something fundamental to human nature. They felt fear just as intensely as any species the consortium had studied. But somewhere in their evolution, humans had developed the ability to function through that fear, to use it. When the ship finally docked at Colony 7, medical teams rushed Williams to the hospital. The doctors said he would recover fully. As the rest of the crew filed off the ship, exhausted and traumatized, paused beside. You got what you needed for your research? She asked. I observed courage, said quietly. But I do not understand it. You were all afraid. I detected your terror. How did you continue? Looked at the analyst with tired eyes. What choice did we have? Fear doesn't change what needs to be done. It just reminds you that it matters, that it's real. Williams knew he might die, and he went anyway. Not because he wasn't afraid, but because we needed him. That's what humans do. We're scared and we do it anyway. She walked away, leaving alone on the docking platform. The analyst had more data than ever, but understanding remained elusive. Fear was supposed to be a stop sign. For humans, it seemed to be a starting gun. Spent 2 more weeks on Earth, interviewing psychologists, historians, and ordinary citizens. The analyst learned about human philosophy, about their concepts of courage and bravery. Every human culture had words for this phenomenon. Every human society celebrated those who acted despite their fear. A philosopher at a university explained it simply. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's acting in the presence of fear. We don't value people who feel no fear. We value people who feel it and move forward anyway. That's what makes the action meaningful. Finally understood. This was not a biological anomaly. This was cultural evolution working in tandem with biology. Humans had turned their greatest weakness into their defining strength. The analyst returned to the consortium with data that would challenge everything they knew about fear. Part 3. The council chamber was filled beyond capacity. Word had spread through the consortium that findings about humans would be significant, and analysts from across dozens of departments had arrived to witness the presentation. The chamber hummed with electromagnetic chatter as beings of various forms speculated about what the fuss was about. Stood at the center of the chamber, its crystalline form refracting light into rainbow patterns across the assembled crowd. The analyst had spent 3 full cycles preparing this presentation, organizing the data into a coherent argument. But even now, worried that the council would dismiss the findings. They were too radical, too contrary to established theory. Council member called the chamber to order. Senior analyst has returned from field research in Dimension 7 Prime. The subject was the species known as humans and their apparently anomalous fear responses. Analyst, you may begin. Activated the holographic displays. Thank you, council member. I will state my conclusion first as it will frame everything else. Humans do not have a broken fear response. They have evolved to weaponize fear itself. The chamber erupted in confused chatter, raised an appendage for silence. That is quite a claim. Please support it with evidence. Of course. Brought up brain scans of human neural pathways. Observe the human brain structure. When a human experiences fear, the amygdala activates as expected, flooding the body with stress hormones. But note these pathways here. In humans, the fear response is routed directly through the prefrontal cortex and motor control centers. The fear signal does not terminate in paralysis. It enhances focus and physical capability. That seems unlikely, another council member interjected. Fear hormones impair cognitive function. This is documented across thousands of species. Correct, agreed. But human stress hormones have a different effect. Small doses of adrenaline and cortisol improve their reaction time, sharpen their senses, and increase their strength. Their bodies have adapted to use fear as fuel. Observe this footage. The display showed Sarah Martinez running into the burning section of the space station, highlighted her biological readings in real time. Note the fear markers. She is experiencing terror equivalent to what would incapacitate most species, yet her performance improves. Her reaction time decreases by 12%. Her decision-making becomes faster and more accurate. She rescues 5 individuals while maintaining full cognitive function. The chamber watched in silence as the footage played out. When it ended, a junior analyst spoke up. Perhaps this individual has abnormal neural structures, an outlier. Shook its head. I observed hundreds of humans in fear-inducing situations. The pattern holds across all demographics. This is not an individual trait. It is species-wide. The analyst brought up more footage. The cargo hauler crew working through the reactor crisis. A mountain climber scaling a dangerous peak. A surgeon performing emergency procedures during a disaster. In every case, the humans were terrified, and in every case, they performed exceptionally. But this is only biology, said. Surely their culture teaches them to avoid fear. On the contrary, displayed thousands of pages of human philosophy, literature, and cultural teachings. Human civilization actively celebrates fear. They have a concept called courage, which they define as acting despite fear. They teach their children to face their fears. They honor individuals who perform dangerous acts while afraid. They consider fearlessness to be foolishness, but acting while afraid to be heroic. The displays showed human entertainment, horror films, thrill rides, extreme sports. They seek out fear recreationally. They believe it makes them feel alive, that it helps them grow stronger. They have sayings. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Courage is not the absence of fear. Their entire cultural framework treats fear as something to embrace and work with, not something to avoid. A senior analyst from the psychology department spoke up. But surely there are limits. What happens when humans face truly existential terror, when death is certain? Had been waiting for this question. The display showed Williams entering the radiation-filled engine compartment. This human knew he would likely die from radiation exposure. His fear responses were at maximum levels. Observe his behavior. The council watched Williams work through the repairs, his hands shaking, his breathing ragged, but his actions purposeful. When he emerged and said, "If we're gonna die trying," several council members recoiled in shock. "He faced certain death and chose to act anyway," said quietly. "This is not unusual for humans. I found thousands of historical records of humans performing similar acts. They call it sacrifice. They consider it noble. They teach their children that this is admirable behavior." The chamber fell silent. Finally spoke. "What you are describing is a species that has fundamentally broken the fear paradigm. Fear is supposed to promote survival through avoidance. These humans use it to enhance performance in the face of danger. This should not be evolutionarily stable." "And yet it is," said. "I believe the explanation lies in human social structure. Humans are intensely social creatures. Their survival has always depended on group cohesion. An individual human who flees danger might survive, but their group might perish. So humans evolved to value group survival over individual safety. Fear reminds them what is at stake, but it does not override their commitment to protecting others." Brought up the interview with. The council listened as the captain explained that fear simply reminded humans that something mattered, that it was real. "They have transmuted fear," concluded. "Where every other species experiences it as a stop sign, humans experience it as a call to action. Fear tells them something is important enough to fight for. This is not a malfunction. This is adaptation." The chamber erupted in debate. Some analysts argued that conclusions were too extreme. Others demanded to see more data. A few suggested that humans might be a threat to other species if they could not be stopped by fear-based deterrence. It was this last comment that made Speak Up again. "Council, I must address the question of threat assessment. During my time with humans, I asked them what they feared most. Do you know what they told me?" The chamber quieted. "They fear failing to protect others. They fear letting down people who depend on them. They fear not being brave enough when it matters. Their fears are oriented toward duty and responsibility." Williams was not afraid of dying. He was afraid of his crew dying while he did nothing. Sarah was not afraid of the fire. She was afraid of failing to save the children. Displayed the philosopher's explanation. Humans understand that courage is not the absence of fear. They value fear because it tells them what matters. A human who feels no fear is considered broken, dangerous. A human who feels fear but acts anyway is considered heroic. This distinction is critical. The analyst paused, letting this sink in. "Based on my observations, humans are only dangerous to those who threaten what they love. Their fear-enhanced performance makes them formidable, yes, but it is not random aggression. It is protective, defensive. They become most dangerous when they are most afraid because fear tells them something precious is at risk." Council member considered this. So you are saying that humans are not fearless warriors, but rather fear-driven protectors. Precisely. The human who feels no fear is likely to be reckless and destructive. The human who feels fear and acts anyway is likely to be careful, purposeful, and motivated by protection rather than aggression. A vote was called. Should humans be classified as a threat species? The council debated for hours before reaching a decision. Finally, announced the result. The consortium classifies humans as a Class VII paradox species. They have turned fear from a weakness into a strength. This is unprecedented in our records. We recommend that other species be informed of this trait, not as a warning, but as crucial information for interaction. Humans should not be threatened casually, as they will respond with fear-enhanced capability. But they should also not be considered hostile, as their aggressive responses are typically defensive in nature. Felt something like relief. The council had accepted the findings. Humans would be understood, not feared themselves. As the chamber emptied, approached. This is remarkable work, analyst. You have discovered something that challenges thousands of cycles of research. Tell me, after spending so much time with humans, what is your personal assessment of them? Consider the question carefully. I have studied fear across 47 dimensions, council member. I have seen it paralyze the strong and destroy the confident. Fear is the universe's most effective weapon. And then I met a species that looked at fear and said, this just means it matters. They are terrifying, not because they feel no fear, but because they feel it and move forward anyway. That is something the galaxy has never seen before. Do you believe they will spread? Asked. Without question, humans are curious, ambitious, and driven. They will explore dangerous regions that other species avoid. They will face challenges that would stop others. And they will do it all while being absolutely terrified. But that fear will not stop them. If anything, it will motivate them. Was silent for a moment. Perhaps that is what the universe needed, a species that refuses to let fear have the final word. Returned to its quarters and began writing the final report. The analyst included everything. The brain scans, the cultural analysis, the observed behaviors, the philosophical frameworks, but also included something unusual for a scientific report, a personal observation. In every language Earth has produced, humans have a word for this phenomenon. In English, they call it courage. But after extensive study, I have concluded it is more than simple bravery. It is alchemy, the transmutation of terror into will. They take the emotion that cripples others and forge it into strength. This is not a species to be feared or dismissed. This is a species to be understood and perhaps admired. They have taught themselves to do the impossible, to be afraid and unstoppable at the same time. As filed the report, the analyst thought about Sarah running into flames, Williams walking into radiation, making impossible choices while her hands shook with fear. The galaxy would soon know about humans. Other species would encounter them, trade with them, perhaps even conflict with them. But now, at least, they would understand. Humans were not fearless. They were something far more remarkable. They were afraid, and they moved forward anyway. In a universe where fear was supposed to be the ultimate stop sign, humans had made it their starting gun. And that changed everything.